it's a difficult time to be a socialist. And I don't mean, you know, you've got those on the right that have punished socialists. You've got those who call themselves leftists, and those on the left are ready to punish you. They don't like socialists in the trade union movement. And the practical ways in which socialists can organise within their own trade unions and organise within the movement itself, yeah, I'll come on to that in a second. But today, you know, Chris alluded to the fact that, you know, it's, I think your performance politics. Well, we've got that in the TUC at the moment. Well, it's a great big hall, beautifully laid out. But you know what it reminded me of when I went there? It was sort of a Labour Party conference. And, you know, whilst it is the only area in town where the TUC and its affiliated trade unions can talk about policy, it is very organised and structured. If you really think that real debate happens in those conference halls, then you're misguided. So yeah, I'm a bit depressed at the moment and the way and the state of things. But I think, you know, when we look at how we can out-organise and get active, hopefully I'll give you some hope. The two previous speakers spoke very well on the situation in Ukraine, and of course, you know, I'm a former military man myself, and I suppose that's pointing me in the direction that actually, yeah, it is pretty grim, that thing war, and actually workers shouldn't be fighting other workers, especially on the basis of, you know, these pretences that are on at the moment. But my two colleagues covered that very well. In the conference hall today, or this week, we're going to be talking about the anti-trade union laws and the minimum strike service levels that are going to be implemented, which is pretty much, you know, another reason why I'm depressed, because it's removing the right to strike. You know, the anti-trade union laws will work bad enough, and it was mentioned that, you know, Tony Blair didn't reverse the 5 changes to the workers' rights that have happened since Thatcher when he got elected. And he was right, he boasted of the fact that we've still got the worst workers' rights in Europe, and they've got worse. So, forgive me for thinking that the Labour Party's commitment, and I really do hope that the commitment given by the Labour Party at the moment to reverse those laws in 100 days happens. But we've got to be prepared as socialists for when it doesn't. I mean, if it doesn't, sorry, Freudian slip. But like I said, it's tough being a socialist now, and we have got to be squeaky clean. So what I've learned, I've been an activist now for 23 years. I've been in a senior lay members role for the last 9 years. And one few things I'd like to impart on you is that my socialism is the compass that, you know, makes those decisions in the trade union movement a lot easier. Socialism is, like I said earlier, it's feared more on the left, I feel now, than it is by those on the right. And we have these problems with democracy. We also have a problem with the party that we've set up as the trade unions to represent us. The democratic structures within the party we know are being used against us. Well, they're not even democratic structures anymore. We're getting socialist banned from, or even trade unionists, not even what I would call socialists, but socialists not allowed to stand in elections and being punished for standing on the picket line of, like Tosh said, their former trade unions. Yeah. The other problem we have with, especially what I've seen these last couple of days, is that we still have the trade union movement being told what to do by the Labour Party. It is the tail wagging the dog. Yeah. It's the party that the trade unions have set up. They should be receiving instructions from the trade unions and implementing those in manifestos in the party that we buy, pretty much, yeah, we fund and we organise in. So these are the kind of main problems that we've got within the movement at the moment. But how do we sort that out as socialists? Well, like I said, one thing you've got to be, as a worker, you've got to be squeaky clean. Because as soon as you open your mouth as a socialist in the workplace in that type of way, then your head becomes above the parapet, and that's fine. But any chance the management will have to sack you is, we've got to rule out. So you've got to be good time people, you've got to turn up smart, presentable, and you've got to do your job very well. You must work hard. You've got to be principled. And in fact, you've got to work harder than everybody else around you, especially if you're going to take up those jobs, lay rep jobs and jobs within the trade union movement, because, like I said, you're always in the firing line. But socialists have got a bigger task to do. It seems to me that, I say 23 years, Tosh doing it longer and Chris doing it longer. It's Groundhog Day. We're having the same arguments year in, year out. The Congress hasn't changed. The Labour Party motions haven't changed. It's the same stuff, just doing one big turnover each time in a big barrel. And we're having the same fights over and over again. So my view is that the Socialists, we've got to change the system. We've got to change the system, we've got to change the government, we've got to make it a socialist government. And we do that by several means. But the main one, like I said, is why I'm here talking to you today, is through the trade unions. And so as socialists, you can't just sit there and do nothing. You've got to be active. You've got to be active in your branches. You've got to be active in your communities. You've got to be active in all the structures within the trade union movement. But most importantly, you've got to get into the positions of power. Because at the moment, what we have is a structure and layer in the trade union movement that I imagine some years ago when they first got involved were very principled and very grand ideas of how they can change the world. But right now, there is no ideas or optimum on how they can change the system. And so we have got to get in as socialists in those layers, those higher levels of the trade union movement, and make those changes ourselves. Because what you want to do is, if you're a principal socialist in trade unions and you're hard work and you go through all these positions, lay rep up to executive or wherever, or general secretary, if you're lucky, what you want to do is get there. When you get there, you want to see like-minded people like you. Because the way the trade union movement is structured at the moment, the only way you change stuff is if you're operating, in my view, in that higher level. Because behind the scenes, the Trade Union Congress, all of the items that are contentious are being asked to be remitted. Any motions that are awkward are compensated so that they're almost meaningless. And a lot of the work to kind of stifle debate is done behind the scenes, and what arrives on the Congress floor is pretty much a happy-clappy kind of ceremony, if you like. And we don't need that. We don't need that. We need people like Tosh, myself and Chris talking to people like you. You know, we need to have the voice and talk about socialism, even if it offends the people we're organised within. And I suppose that's the other thing as well. When you're organising with the trade unions, you have got to have those principles. You've got to carry the membership with you. And, you know, whilst it breaks my heart sometimes, you know, we have a policy of supporting the Labour Party, and I will. In the decisions I make within the trade union movement, I will support the policy of the trade union, and I will hold my nose and give money to Labour, knowing that it will probably be used to punish us in the end. But that is what we've got to do. You've got to stick by those principles, carry the members with you. But at opportunities like this, we've got to also have the debate, free and open debate. So one of the things, and the key things, is making the TUC and the Congress a lot more democratic. And with that, we have proper ideals coming from the grassroots, involving trades councils and local community groups. And it was quite right, Chris, you know, and Tosh actually, about the input and our involvement in the communities has vanished. But of course, that's because of the loss and deindustrialisation of vast swathes of the country. So we haven't got those connections anymore, but we've got to create them. Where they're not there, they've got to create them. And I'm a big fan of the trades councils, and I was a bit disappointed today, actually, with all the rhetoric that went on during today's debate about minimum service levels, about willful disobedience, and setting up a meeting organised by the Trade Union Congress to look at disobedience of the minimum service levels bill and the anti-trade union laws, which is, of course, really positive. All of this, they were saying that we've got to be more active and we've got to be more involved in the communities, and yet, you know, they refused to enact a motion that would give more power and say to the trades councils, which I believe are a great way of working within the communities and mobilising working people to support the strikes that we've had. ASLEF, a small, tiny trade union, but very powerfully industrially, but we don't have the feet on the ground. And so when we go into dispute and go on picket lines, we work with the trades councils to get that support. I mean, we had rallies and marches through the town of Street in the Clerks dispute that reversed that around. On the first day of the transport strikes with our sister union, the RMT, the trades councils organised to the point where hundreds of people marched past our picket. And they joined our picket to the point in one of our areas where there were more supporters than there were ASLEF pickets. And that's got to be done. We've got to go in and reinvigorate those trades councils, because I'm not being naive. You know, I know that some of them need modernising. We need youth in there. We need activism, and we need youth to reinvigorate that. But that's what needs to happen as well. So for the future political landscape for trade unions, well, it's looking bleak. Socialists are not popular right now. They're not popular in the labour movement. They're not popular because of the same reason, I imagine. They're not popular in the trade unions. But we've got to remain consistent, principled. We've got to be the signpost, not the weather vane. And we've got to organise. And it is going to be a long game. But to do that within the trade union movement, you've got to get into the structures, get into positions, and use what you've learned to change. And like I said, you just hope there are other socialists in those positions with you and actually talk about leadership change.